As the winemaker for one of Australia's most coveted labels, Penfolds, John Duval won many awards during his 29-year career with the winery, including Winemaker of the Year at the International Wine and Spirit Competition in London. In 2003, he left Penfolds to start his own winery and to be a consulting winemaker for several wineries in Australia, Europe, Chile, and Washington State. John joins me today to chat about those experiences. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Natalie. Good to be with you.
Terrific. Let's, before we jump into your wines, which we're going to taste today, I'd love to ask you a bit about your experience with Penfolds since it was so long-ranging. What do you think it is that makes Penfolds such an iconic wine?
Well, there's a lot of history and tradition. It goes back, obviously 1844 is when the company was first founded by Dr. Penfold, but really the modern generation of winemaking started with Max Schubert in the early 1950s, and he created a completely new style of red wine that Australia hadn't seen before, and from that a family of wines were developed, wines that had great depth and character. They used new oakers that really hadn't been used in Australia before, and it was also a cellaring style. So I think one of the great attributes of Penfolds, the Penfolds red wines in particular, is that ability to cellar. Penfolds Grange, Max really wanted to create a wine that could keep on improving for at least 20 years, and the great vintages, 20, 30, 40, and the 1953 Grange is still a remarkable bottle of wine.
Wow. And is that something you still subscribe to in making your own wines today, that they are cellarable, long-aging type wines?
Yeah, they are. I'm not exactly copying or trying to copy a Penfolds Grange or anything like that. A matter of fact, probably my style is a little more akin to some of the new wines I had the opportunity to develop for Penfolds, wines like the RWT, which was focused purely on Barossa, another style of Barossa Shiraz, aged in French oak rather than the more traditional American oak aging that a lot of the Penfolds Grange and the other traditional Penfolds wines have used. So my style is probably a refinement of that. So just focusing in just the Barossa Valley.
Okay. And why is it that there has been a myth about Australian wines, even California wines, not being able to age? Like that seemed to be the focus for Penfolds, and now to a certain degree for your own wines. Why did we think that Australian wines couldn't age?
Well, I think a lot of it's to do with, I think that there's a different style of tannins that we have in talking about red wine. Our wines have quite a bit of tannin, but they seem to be approachable as young wine, giving the impression that they're not going to sell it for a length of time. But the absolute amount of tannin in the wines will certainly make sure that those wines that are built with some structure to start with have great selling potential. So it's a different. The soils and climate are different to Europe. So I think that the effect on the palate of the tannins when the young wines are different. But a lot of the European wines you really can't drink them when they're young wines. You have to give them a little bit more time.
Right, okay. And if you recall, either at Penfolds or with your own wines or consulting, what's been one of your most memorable winemaking moments so far?
Since I've been out by myself, I keep on telling people I was just as nervous, or probably more nervous about the first release of my wine under my own label than what I was in making Penfolds Grange. I knew that the industry was watching what I was doing. I had my own expectations, so I think, speak to my wife. She said I was nervous just about releasing the first vintage. So and it was received very well, so I didn't need to be nervous anyway.
Terrific. And just before we wrap up this part of our conversation, John, because we'll be back with you again to taste your wines, what do you think is the most important thing that you learned while you were making wine at Penfolds and that now you incorporate into the way you approach winemaking?
I think it all starts in the vineyard, and Penfolds place a lot of attention in terms of working with their own vineyard managers or growers, the great growers that they work with. So it's just an understanding of viticulture, of the quality of grapes, and then obviously structure and balance of winemaking. I mean, they're the key things.
Terrific. Okay, well, again, thanks for joining me for this part of our conversation, John, and we will be back soon to talk with you more.
Right.